I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. I'm going to ask Reverend Davis to do the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, please. If you can stand, please do so.
Let us pray. Almighty, most loving God, we thank you for the blessings that you bestow on Southport. And God, we ask that today you be in our minds, you be in our eyes, you be in our mouths, and you be in our hearts, that we may listen to each other and be kind and understanding, but that the decisions that we make will be based entirely on what is good for Southport, the people who live here, who work here, and the people who visit here. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I completely forgot. We got one back because Charles told me you can't do that.
Okay. All right, the first order of business is a special recognition, and I'm going to go up to that microphone. Ellie, would you be so kind to join me up here? For those who do not know Mr. Pittenger is our electrical guru. All things electrical, good or bad, all fall on Ellie's shoulders. And he is retiring at the end of this month. And I have worked with him since I've been elected as an alderman, and we have driven to Wilson a number of times and talked about things, and he's been a great source of information for me, and truly a wonderful person to work with. So we have a proclamation, and it reads, whereas Ellie Pittenger began his career with the city of Southport in 2003 and served in the street, water, and sewer departments, and whereas Mr. Pittenger was promoted to electrical superintendent in 2016, and whereas these many years have marked by exemplary dedication to the best interests of the community and the improvement of the city of Southport's public works and electrical system, and whereas Mr. Pittenger has accomplished Electric City's Municipal Safety Award 2014 through 2019 and a Certificate of Appreciation for the North Carolina Radiation Protection in 2019. And whereas the City of Southport has significantly benefited from Ellie's leadership, particularly in completing the following projects: the establishment of City's solar program in 2013, the Ferry Road Underground, the Fodell Avenue Underground, the Lord Street Underground, the River Drive Underground, and the coordination of the movement of overhead lines from House Street Sewer Project. And whereas on behalf of the City of Southport, I want to express our sincere appreciation to Ellie Pittenger for his dedication, hard work over these past 21 years. We wish him much happiness as he begins his new adventure in life. Proclaimed this 5th day of June 2004, Rich Alt, Mayor of Southport. And sir, here is the proclamation, and I would like you to say a few words.
I can. Thank you. Honorable Mayor, distinguished board, staff, and guests. To those of you kind of starting out, don't let the thought of 20 years or more overwhelm you. If I can do it, you certainly can. And just that, this has been like working with a second family. You guys are more than coworkers, very much more. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for putting up with me.
Thank you, sir. Tom? This is Tom Stanley, who's going to congratulate 3 of our employees who are about to depart for the county.
Good morning, board. Ellie's right. Working for public services in Southport is more than just work, co-workers. You know, we're small, we're a tight-knit group, and really more than friends, we're family. And I know most jobs you go to, they say, oh, we're family. We are family here at the city of Southport, Leeds Public Services. And over the past year, Bonnie has worked us through a merger with utilities with Brunswick County. And I've had 8 guys who've been kind of walking around not sure where they would be, not sure if they would have a job, you know, with Southport, with the county, or somewhere else. But with the help of Bonnie, Therian, city manager, 3 of our employees are going to have jobs at the county. Mark Caban, come on up. Justin Taylor, come on up. And Connor Davis, slide on around. Mark's been with the city 5 or 6 years, I think. Justin's a newbie. He's been here just over a year. And I think Connor's been here with us 3 years?
2 years.
2 years. See how bad it is? But these guys have done a lot for the city. They come to work every day. They've worked not knowing where their next job would be during the merger, after merger, without any moaning or groaning. And it's going to be sad to see them go, really sad. I thought they would never leave me, but they broke my heart, and they said they can't take me anymore. Most of you understand that. But I just want to congratulate these guys. It's a sad loss. It's a loss for the city, but it's definitely a gain for Brunswick County Public Utilities. And I wish them all 3 a prosperous future in whatever they do, and know that personally or professionally, you all have my numbers, and call me anytime, and I'll help you with anything you need.
I hope you saw the common theme there. The people who work here enjoy working here, and they do a great service for everybody in the city. Okay, next up is public comment.
Joe Taylor.
The old man needs all the help he can get, so thank you. I'm Joe Taylor with Murchison Taylor Attorneys in Wilmington. Our firm represents Howard and Denise Russell at 416 East Bay Street. Just for a second, if I will give you my personal experience. When I first came to practice law 50-some years ago, we had a Southport office. And Michael Eisenberg and I were partners, and I worked here, moved to Wilmington. And so we have a real love for the town of Southport. And so I've come this morning on behalf of our clients, but also as what I consider to be sort of a semi-fan of a resident of Southport for all the years I spent down here. And just to talk to you briefly about the proposed parking for the Kingsley Street Park. I've been where you all are. I have been in municipalities. I've been the mayor pro tem of one, and police commissioner, and parks supervision person, and so I know what it's like to sit where you all were sitting. And I just want to, there'll be neighbors that'll want to talk, and they have more personal experience than I do. But based on my personal experience, I look at the park, and I drove down here this morning, and people were walking up and down, and walking up the street, down the street, and it was that neighborhood where the park is, to me, is one of the most charming areas of all of Southport, and really represents the best look of Southport to me. And when I look at it, I don't see a park that is, it's not a destination amenity. So it's really almost a neighborhood area, because I was watching people walking this morning early. And when I look at it from the standpoint of the proposed parking plan, I see that the Kingsley lot that exists now, I think, has 12 spaces, and so that would be 12 vehicles. If you had 4 people for a vehicle, that'd be 48 people. So the new plan would call for 11 spaces. If you had 4 people, that would be 44, and the 2 handicap spaces. That means you would have 25 parking spaces to service that park area. And when I look around town, if you count the number of spaces from East Bay Street to East Moore on the north side of Howell Street in the downtown commercial area, that's 24 spaces. So you would have more spaces in that small neighborhood, that charming neighborhood, than you would have on the whole side of the street in the commercial area. And there are a lot of things that go into that, and the neighbors can speak to that. To me, in my experience in handling municipal things, I always used to look at what was the main thing. If we were going to consider something, what was the main thing to do to not affect the quaintness of the area we were trying to put a municipal facility in? How to protect it, how to provide a safe facility for the adjoining neighbors, and not to do anything that would adversely affect their property values. My personal opinion is that the planned spaces aren't needed, and that from the town standpoint, you have plenty of parking for that charming park, since it's not a destination park. And I feel very strongly that the quaintness of the neighborhood and the residents of the neighborhood, their wishes should be taken into consideration in your decision making. So having said that, I'm going to bow and let some of the neighbors speak to you, if I may. Thank you.
I believe it's Mr. Fortney.
Hello, my name is Sid Fortney. I live at 413 East Bay Street, across the street from this proposed area. First, I'd like to say that on the agenda item concerning the park, there are some statements that aren't exactly true. It says current parking for the pier and park is limited to 2 spots. Since the park was built, and I think it was about 2004, there have been 12 spots on Kingsley Street in addition to the 2 for handicap parking. So I'd like to correct that. I'll stop with that. The agenda, the actual proposal agenda has been printed and is available, but it in essence says that the Kingsley Park reopened. We've noticed more foot traffic and use of the pier area, and I totally agree with that. It is foot traffic. People do not come and park to go to Kingsley Park. They park there sometime, they walk their dogs down to Waterfront Park, come back, get in their car, and leave. It's not a park that you go visit and stay. It's very transient, and there's rarely more than 4 cars there. Sometimes 1, sometimes none. Yesterday afternoon, there was 0 there. Parking is not needed. It's actually underused what we have. Kingsley Park has enough parking. So I think that's one of the things that I wanted to state. So when we found out about this, and it was kind of found out by under the hand way, I actually had an exterminator at my house that told me there was going to be parking across the street. And I asked the neighbors, and no one knew about it. No one on the 400 block of East Bay Street had heard of it. So after a little work and everything, we found out that not only was it proposed, the engineers had already drawn up the plan, and it is now part. Okay, I'm sorry, I hit it and turned it off. So all the neighbors are very much in disagreement with this, and we filed a petition, and the petition there are 9 property owners in the 400 block of East Bay Street. It's signed by all the property owners, and I'll give you the essence of the petition without reading it. One is the first item I pointed to was it's not needed. Secondly, it's more of a personal thing for me, and I'll tell you that. We own the property right across the street from our house, which in essence is a small park. It's called a water skirt, but it's as big as some of the lots here in Southport. It's one of the few areas that you can see the river from Bay Street, from that end of Bay Street anymore. In the 20 years that we've owned it, I've never posted it. People are welcome there. It's used more by the walkers than it is by us. But the neighborhood uses it. 6 of these proposed parking places are actually closer to the water skirt than they are to Kingsley Park because they border that property. And from time to time, we have had a problem with vagrancy there. It's always been taken care of with a few polite words. We've never had to call the police, but I think that more parking, particularly that type of parking, is just going to maybe accelerate that problem, and we don't look forward to that. I would like to keep this property the way it is, keep it up nice, and have it open to the city people that come by and not have to ever post it. The other thing I want to address is a safety issue, and this has been brought out by several of the neighbors. Everyone who signed the petition talked about this. The thought of having pull-in and backup parking at the bottom of, it's the only hill in Southport, by the way. It's the only hill. We call it biker's paradise because when they get up on top on 300 block, they can put their handlebar grips tightened and they can coast down the hill. And now we're going to have cars backing in and out biker's paradise will be biker's regret, I'm afraid. But the parking also calls for gravel, which means the curb would have to be removed. There's been a curb the entire 400 block of East Bay Street as long as we've owned the property and before, and it's there for one reason, it's for drainage. East Bay Street leans a little bit toward the water, and as rain and flood and storm, water comes down. It's a little river, and if you didn't have that curb, it would start to wash the properties. If you remove that curb, put parking, and put gravel, you're going to have gravel in the road. It's just going to happen. The force of the water would bring it there. If you keep the curb and put parking, you're going to have people drive over the curb. They won't want to use it anyway. So I don't know what the solution, whether any thought has been brought into that or not. So the safety part of that, pulling in and out, has been really stressed, and I want to make sure you understand that. And the third point I want to make, I think this is just plain wrong. Let me tell you a story. When the crab factory came down, and that property was divided into 416, which is a building lot, and the park, the Caroon family, Cash Caroons, started building their dream house. Many of you probably remember it. It was a big red brick house. Oh my gosh. Caroon should know better. This is a lapboard town. This is a board and batten town. They were putting up a red brick house, and everyone was aghast. And across the street is where the Harrelsons live. Many of you who've been around Southport may remember some of these people. And they were my next door neighbor. So my wife visited very often with Elizabeth Harrelson. And she asked her one day, said, aren't you dismayed? They're building that huge house right in front of you, and they're going to block your beautiful view. And Elizabeth told my wife, Janie, she says, Janie, the Caroons are very nice people, and I'm happy to have them as my neighbor. I think, and I know, that Howard and Denise Russell are very nice people. They're kind people, they're generous people, they're people of faith. I've gotten to know them, and we're going to be happy to have them as our neighbor, and I think our whole block will be happy to know them. And I would suggest maybe you get to know them a little better. I think they've been targeted. I mean, the whole idea of taking 2,400 square feet, the front yard of one of the most valuable properties in Southport, and putting a gravel parking lot in itself is just preposterous. And I think there needs to be some mending, some healing, maybe even some apologies. I want to say one last thing. At 401 East Bay Street, Dr. Robert Zukowski, he's been there longer than any of us. I asked him if there's anything, he couldn't come today because he's working on Wednesday, but he spent his whole career here in Southport. I asked him if there's anything you want me to say in your behalf. He said yes. Tell him we're praying that the board would do the right thing. I'll leave it with that.
John Akins.
Good morning, Mayor, all you aldermen and the city. Thank you for an opportunity for us to be able to voice our opinions and our thoughts. I've signed that petition, and I'm certainly against the proposal to put parking there. And one of the reasons why I am is I bought my piece of property, which was the the Harrelsons owned all 3 of those lots on Kingsley Drive. And I bought the center lot. It's 106 Kingsley Drive. And when I bought the lot, before I could build, I had to have it surveyed with all the trees that are on the lot and everything about it. I have a copy of that here today. And on Kingsley Drive, there is a rope fence which goes in front of my property went all the way down to the end of Kingsley Drive. That was for parking for Kingsley. It was designated by the city at that time. This is a Google map which shows the posts were there. I have a picture of when I bought the lot in September of 21st of September 2012. The posts are there. There is roping in them. When I was about to complete our house, April the 18th of 2015, the posts are there and there's roping there. I came and talked to you all about the disagreement with it and hope that you would reconsider that. And that was on May the 7th. We had a meeting here. And when I got home at 10:30 that morning from this meeting, all of the posts had been removed and the holes had been filled in with sand. So I called Miss Theron. I said, I need to talk with you. So I set up an appointment with her. And she informed me that she was told that the posts were rotten and they were removed because of that. So that's sufficient amount of parking there. It's 150 feet of parking on Kingsley Drive. It has been there as long as I've been here. I started coming here in 2006 looking at property. And I would respectfully request that you guys please take a look at this and don't do something that's going to take away from our quaint city and the neighborhood that we have in this area. Thank you very kindly.
Donna Fullwood.
Good morning. I'm Donna Fullwood. My address is 807 Cape Harbor Drive. Thank you for allowing me to be able to come and speak with you this morning. I'm speaking about the water samples, and I wanted to let you know, because I hear so much about people's backgrounds and where they come from, and why I got involved with the Creek Watcher program with the Cape Fear River Watch. After I retired, I wanted to do something, that I thought was constructive to possibly help our environment. Growing up here, and that's been a good number of years since we moved here in the early 60s, probably longer than some of you have been living. But we've seen that the environment change with progress, with growth, within building houses, with a lot of different things. And I've noticed that in growing up, and things do change as we age, that we used to catch lots of fish, lots of crabs. When my mom would say, go get me some oysters for Thanksgiving to put in my dressing, that would be what we would do. Over time, we noticed that there's a depletion in the fish populations, which are blamed on a lot of things. But also, we have children who go into the creeks, the waters, and we want them to be safe. So I wanted to get involved in something constructive. So I became a creek watcher, which is taking water samples. And my creek is Price's Creek down Outmore Street. And over they've been taking samples since around 2020, that's a long time, 2020. And I've only been doing it for like almost 2 years. But Over that time, and it's been brought before the board before, about the high level of the bacteria and E. coli content in the creeks. We've got Price Creek, Moore Creek, Price Creek, Bonnets Creek, Cottage Creek, 12th Street, 9th Street, some of those little drainages coming off. And over that time, the E. coli and bacteria content has been way above EPA standards, the Environmental Protection Agency's allowable standards for being safe. So it's just really time for something to be done about that. There is not right now, from what we've been doing and from working with the town and taking samples, a cause has not been determined. So me personally and others would like to recommend further testing to see where this bacteria content is coming from. If it is unacceptable for people to be in or children to be playing in this water, then there needs to be some type of signage or notification that, beware, be careful. When my great-grandson was coming and playing in the river down here, I just had in the back of my mind, I said, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't try to drink some of that water. But, we just need to be really careful. And as a town, we have our economy to look forward to. We've got already some of our areas are closed to shellfish, which means crabs, clams, other things. So just, I don't know what, you guys are going to decide to do, but I hope and pray that, we'll work together and, come up with a solution. Thank you.
Matt Watson?
Good morning. I live at 402 East Bay Street. I just have a couple things to state. I was curious if studies have been done to show what the impact is going to be in removing the curb at that end of Bay Street where the parking is being considered. We live on that side of the road, and when the water comes down the hill, it is more like a river. And to put a gravel parking lot, as was stated earlier, I believe to put a gravel parking lot on that end of the road is going to be more washout than anything. And as also stated, kids on skateboards, bicycles, walkers going down the road and having to negotiate through a stream of gravel that's run out onto the road every time it rains would not be good. I don't have a lot to say. I would like to let everybody know this is going to impact everybody in the neighborhood. It is not just going to impact the one person that's being directly affected by it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Laura Sharkey?
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. I am here to sing the praises of Ellie Pittenger. Ellie has been such a dedicated, wonderful employee for Southport. He was such a gem to work with. He was extremely helpful to me when I served as alderman, and I know he's been helpful to so many citizens. Ellie did his job the best he could. He researched what he didn't know. He came forward with positive attitude, and I'm sure he was a pleasure to be around in Public Works, that family element. He has some quirks, but that's what makes people endear themselves to you, right? We can't all be the same. So Ellie's uniqueness is one of those things that we cherish. And I just want to say thank you for your service, and I'm so glad that you now get to move on to retirement, because retirement's fun. And I'm so glad that the rocking chair was presented to you in Southport fashion like it should be. So. And before I go, if I can, I still have the microphone. Concerning the budget, just some short words. It's a challenge. But it's every budget cycle is a new opportunity as well as a challenge, right? And what you may have had condition-wise or priorities 2 years ago, because of changes with finances, conditions of buildings or staff, there's new things that need to be addressed. Don't be held hostage by former promises or even former boards. Maybe previous boards were supposed to get something accomplished and they didn't, but that may not be the right priority today. My advice and my hope as a taxpayer is that you focus on health and safety, infrastructure, which often is health and safety too, and what generates revenue for us. What are our needs in the city, not so much wants right now? And that's all, really. I wish you all luck. It's very challenging, but you'll come through it and you'll make good decisions, I'm sure. Thanks.
And that's all that signed up, but I do have 2 comments to read.
Go ahead, ma'am.
The first is Nathaniel Lambeth, and he and his wife reside at 409 East Bay Street. To Southport City Manager, Mayor, and Aldermen, due to other commitments, I cannot attend this meeting. I would appreciate this letter being read in my absence. And this is regarding the June 5th Board of Aldermen meeting and proposed parking lot on 400 block of East Bay Street. As stated in my previous letter of May 9th, 2024, for which I received only 1 response, my wife and I own the house at 409 East Bay Street in Southport. We have a vested interest in what happens in front of our house. We observe the use of Kingsley Park and Pier. A majority of those using the Kingsley Park and Pier are waterfront walkers. They either walk down Bay Street or the sidewalk on north side of Bay Street to get to the park and pier. Some do approach from Kingsley Street. Very few actually use the existing parking spaces located on the west side of Kingsley. If overflow parking is needed, there is additional parking along East Moore Street in front of the old Smithfield Burying Grounds. There also is a nice new paved parking lot at Taylor Field Park. There is a walking trail that runs from Taylor Field that connects with South Kingsley Street. The city can and should use our tax dollars more wisely. The proposed Bay Street parking is not necessary and will be a traffic hazard. Putting a parking lot at an intersection and curve is not a smart decision. When the city created Kingsley Park and Pier in 2004, they put up 15 posts with rope demarcating 130 feet of existing parking along the west side of Kingsley Street. The city has failed to maintain the rope and it has deteriorated over the years. This existing Kingsley parking allowed room for 12 cars parked at an angle. Across the street were 2 additional handicap parking spaces. Within the last month, the head of Southport's maintenance crew has removed the aforementioned 15 posts and rope, making it appear that there is no longer parking available on Kingsley Street. Removing the existing parking demarcation barriers is deceitful and shows there is underlying city management agenda. Yes, it appears your minds are made up and you are going to have your new parking on Bay Street, whether it is needed, wanted, or safe. This is against the wishes of many long-term citizens of Southport. People have been coming to Southport for hundreds of years for its charm. There are signs around Southport that say, "Don't change Southport, let Southport change you." There is an important lesson found in those words. The apparent direction being taken by the Southport City Manager, City Mayor, and Aldermen may just kill the Southport's charm. Respectfully, Nathaniel Lambeth. And the second one is Gerald Donaldson. I appreciate the opportunity to offer a short statement before our Southport government leaders in strong support for the Field of Dreams, universally accessible, inclusive playground. The support for the Field of Dreams inclusive playground is both wide and deep throughout Southport, and the need for the playground is clear. Members of our Southport government who have strongly supported the playground can only be commended for their persistence and dedication to accomplishing this important project. The issue facing Southport is the health and safety of those using the playground and associated impacts on the surrounding area. Taylor Field, a rare and tranquil remaining open space in Southport where development has rapidly erased open areas, is a genuine urban treasure. It is surrounded by a substantial buffer of woods and understory vegetation which provide habitat for urban wildlife, including nesting birds and other animals. However, Taylor Field has significant problems as the choice for the Field of Dreams project. During summer months, the open field will experience soaring temperatures that can seriously endanger the safety of both children and adults during the day. Taylor Field is also partly within a flood zone and is close to Bonnet Creek, which has had high readings for coliform bacteria. An allied consideration is whether there are specific tanks and septic drain fields for area residences that could add to the E. coli load. Following big storms with flooding, including overflow of Bonnet Creek, Taylor Field can not only be rendered unusable for many days, but it could also constitute a serious and protracted health threat for humans and animals. Taylor Field is also located in a residential and historic area with many nearby homes. The narrow streets leading to Taylor Field can easily experience a tremendous increase in traffic from the frequency and size of large vehicles, such as school and activity buses, accessing and departing the playground. This not only can cause disruptive traffic conditions on adjacent streets, but will doubtless have a strong negative effect on area residents. The Field of Dreams needs to be realized. However, Taylor Field, although the chosen site several years ago, must be vetted anew in light of new facts and circumstances. A location that is safer, healthier, and less disruptive of adjacent residential areas, that avoids adverse traffic impacts on narrow local streets and is better accessible to both Southport and other county citizens should be carefully evaluated. Underlying these considerations are the tight budget prospects for Southport and whether the burden of future maintenance funding could be shared with other nearby town or county governments. Thank you.
Is that it, ma'am? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close public comment. All in favor say aye. It's unanimous, thank you. Public comment is closed. The next agenda item is the agenda. And I'd like to have the board entertain two motions. They're basically, they're sort of tied together. The first motion I'd like to entertain is the removal of item H5, which is the tree ordinance revisions. And we'll put that off for another meeting, and we'll explain that later on in the session. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next one that I would like to entertain is a motion to add a new H5. And the new H5 is to fill that hole there, and that would be for Tom Z to come in and start the discussion. No vote on anything. An informational discussion on a pervious, impervious stormwater policy. He would like to have the conversation start, and then we would have further debate as time goes on. So, is there a motion to do that?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Is there any comment? All in favor say aye. Aye. It's any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next agenda item is the consent agenda. If you have picked up an agenda in front of you, you will see that there's 9 sets of minutes from various board meetings from April 11th through May 10th. So the old-fashioned of one meeting a month has gone away. And you'll see probably that again from May 10th through the middle of June. So those are the first 9 things you can see on the agenda. Number 10 is the cancellation of the July 1st regular board meeting. That's done because we're going to be right in the middle of the 4th of July week, and all the buildings and everything will be occupied. And the last one is the McPherson bid for the kayak launch. And just, I'm sorry. Here it is. Just as a quick summary of that, we put out for bid the building of the kayak ramp, kayak launch, and we got the bid back. And the document talks about the awarding of the bid, and the board has already voted to pay our share of it, which is $17,000 out of $183,000. So I just want to put you on notice that that's moving forward. We had the groundbreaking, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or so. 3 weeks ago. I've lost count. But we're moving forward on that project. So that is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to talk just a little bit more for the public that may not be fully familiar with the background on the kayak launch and the financing?
Certainly. The grant was
Perhaps the city manager would.
No, I got it. The grant was approved by the North Carolina Department of DEQ, Division of Coastal Management. The approval of the grant acknowledged the budget construction of $183,000. The Public Beach and Coastal Waterfront Access Program grant funding provides up to $141,000 reimbursement towards the total construction cost. Southport Marina had years ago agreed to kick in $25,000 into the construction because it's on the back end of their property is where it starts. And the city is responsible for the remainder is $17,000. As we go forward with this program, that of course attaches into Cottage Creek, where it's brackish water, and you'll be able to kayak from there out to, if you want to, kayak right out to the middle of the ICW and watch the ships go by. But you'll be able to have the whole marsh area to go up and down. It's something that has been on the last board, this board's agenda for a long time, and we're moving forward with that. Certainly. So we now move on to the regular agenda, which is the first one is the Bay.
Can we do a
I'm sorry,
motion,
yes.
motion to
Yeah.
approve?
A motion to accept the consent agenda.
Yes, sir, so move.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda? Any opposed? Unanimous? Thank you very much. And thank you, Bonnie, for catching that. All right, the next agenda is the Creek Watchers lab results.
You want to start?
I will. So this has been going on for about 3 years about the Creek Watchers. You heard somebody speak about that just earlier. And they've been, that's what brought it to the attention of the city, that there was a potential problem with all three creeks, that being Cottage Creek, both at 9th Street and 11th Street, Bonnet's Creek, right at Moore Street, and then Price's Creek all the way down, right where it's the salt water and the fresh water mix at the end. If you go down Moore Street all the way to the end, you go over a little bridge, hardly see it, but that's where the creek comes out of. And as if you go down there enough times, you'll notice that some people fish down there at different times. And so the Creek Watchers brought this to my attention. They brought it to Alderman Mosteller. Well, they brought it to all of our attention, but Alderman Mosteller and I have worked on this for a while. And we reached out to what I thought would be an easy fix. You go to public health and say, look, it's dirty water. You're in charge of that. Could you please fix that? Well, not in North Carolina. Not that type of water. The Department of Public Health does not address that. We reached out to the Department of Environmental Quality up in Wilmington, and didn't get much help there either. Now DEQ will monitor the water once the kayak ramp is there, because that's recreational water. These other water bodies are not considered recreational, so they do not monitor it, they wouldn't even help us with the verbiage on a sign. So as we moved forward, we had to work around which lab is certified, who's doing what, how is the water collected. Tom Stanley has been spearheading that for the city. The Creek Watchers do their own collection, but Tom Stanley, correct me if I'm wrong on that, one of the city reports had Price's Creek at 10,000. Is that correct?
At one point, yes, sir.
What? I'm sorry?
Yes, sir, at one point.
At one point it was 10,000. To give you an idea what that means, about 236 is the threshold between good and bad. So if you're fishing, 236, yeah. 10,000, yeah. So the manager will talk about the current readings. They're lower than that right now. They're still in the bad side, but they're lower. So as we move through this process, we have, and once again, Alderman Mostel has been part of this process, discussing how we might address the issue to protect our citizens from this water when it's polluted. So this will lead to a discussion about asking the manager and the staff to write up a policy that will allow the manager to post signs on the polluted water when it's polluted, and also to take the signs down when it's not polluted. So the board is not involved in, we set policy, but we don't execute policy. That's the staff's job. But we would want the idea is to have the manager, the office of the manager, write the policy, come back to us, vote on it, and move on. So, you're up, ma'am.
All right, what I'm passing out right now is I had Tom do readings this week, so that's what you're going to get right now. And the readings, which is what the issue has been all along, are way down. So we go way up, we go way down, we go way up. I must commend Mr. Stanley, who has gone out there, walked it, tried to find what is the source. He is petrified of snakes, and he's very careful about how he gets around doing this in the right-of-ways. But we can't find anything. We find no septic, we find nothing. And that's been the frustrating part of all of this, because the readings fluctuate so much and we don't know where it's coming from. I know Alderman Mosteller and the mayor have met with us and the staff with DEQ, with the county health department, and we just are not getting any help at all. What we are being told on a number of occasions is be very careful what you put up there for signage, because if you get too specific and we have no backup to say what is causing it, which we don't right now, then we could also be sued. So this is a hard battle that we're trying to figure out. One issue that I know Tom Z, our engineer, was at a seminar. Wilmington has the same problem and has had it for years and years and years and has never figured it out and has never found out, is it human? What is the problem? So I think that's been a stumbling and a real issue for the staff and us how to find it. Now I did have our insurance company, Darius Story, what's his last name?
It's Darius Chisholm.
Darius went out with Tom Stanley and gave us some recommendations. We were hoping to have it in writing today. We do not. Dory, would you please report out what Darius had told us about signage?
He recommended basically doing a very basic sign without too much information, just water unsafe for drinking, instead of putting the actual possible pollutants and things like that, and also stay off the rocks.
So one of the things, and we're gonna show you what it's gonna look like. This is, I'm sorry, the top got cut off, but this is a sign we're recommending anyways, that would say not for human consumption, and just make it short and sweet and simple. Thanks, Cheyenne. And so that's a recommendation, but it's up to the board whether we move forward with the policy and what kind of signage and what you want to do here. One thing I do want to say, and I appreciate the Creek Watchers and all the work they've done through the years, but we have got to work on this together. So what's been happening is the city does our thing with the labs. Creek Watchers does their thing with the labs. We're doing it at different times. We're doing it in different places. So one thing I would highly recommend is that from now on, we do these lab tests together in the same way with each other, so that whatever the city's getting, it's reliable information. So that's all I got to say.
Karen, do you have something?
I actually have a question that when we were, and this might be for Tom Stanley, when we were in the meeting with DEQ and Creek Watchers and everybody, staff, one of the things that got brought up was the need to do that dye. You had done the orange dye. if I'm remembering correctly, Tom. And they pointed out that maybe doing that orange dye, there was a more thorough way to test the water that you might not visually see it so much, but it would be there. And I just wondered if y'all redid those tests or had any conversation about that. Or maybe decided that it was sufficient.
What we dyed was a sewer system, but they were talking about a dye that, I don't quite remember the verbiage, but it was some other type of dye, and then they had some type of machine or optics that they could see it out in the waterway. They did the same thing with ADM, and saw that ADM had their discharge that was coming all the way down the Intercoastal Waterway. I'm not convinced solely that the E. coli and enterococci is coming in from the tide, because the readings, I've done readings high tide, I've done readings low tide. The readings on high tide are higher than they are low tide. Two things: is it coming inland from the Intercoastal Waterway? Is it going out? Is it high? Is it low going out because the low tide's allowing the water to drain out, or is it high on the end tide because the tide's not allowing it to come in? I would say, my opinion would be a little bit of both, but I really think the majority of it is coming from the Intercoastal Waterway, because I went out with the fire department one time doing samples out in the middle of the Intercoastal Waterway, and there were still over 3,000 per milliliter of 100 milliliters of water. So it's everywhere, and I don't think we're going to find a source. I would love to find a source to put it to rest, but man, it's painstaking. But there was a type of dye that they talked about that had some kind of special optics to find, that they did with ADM.
In our packet, it looks like the incoming, for the most part, the incoming tide numbers are higher than the outgoing.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes, it is.
And so that idea that it's coming from the river, or do you feel at this point our sewer lines, you've sort of accounted for our sewer lines?
The city has accounted for sewer lines, as well as the third party doing the Find It, Fix It study when the city got the grant to CCTV smoke test. They verified it as well. We smoke tested it. We have CCTV'd inside the sewer lines. We have dropped dye in the sewer lines, gravity, and force main, and all that came up clear. I was hoping it was a sewer line because that's an easy fix. You find something broke, you fix it. You know, when you can't find something broke, it is tough to fix.
Tom, have we eliminated the possibility that may be coming from something further inland or upstream?
No, we haven't eliminated it. Finding where it would come from, inland, is hard because the creeks get to a point where they stop. I've thought about the possibility of, all Smithfield Woods or septic systems, but that's a long way to travel, to get the E. coli from, hundreds and hundreds of yards. My thoughts was, what do bears do in the woods? And after it rains, where does it go? All stormwater, rainwater, eventually goes to the creeks. There's animals there. There's things in the woods. The more building that's going on in Southport and throughout the county and everywhere else, the animals flock toward the water. They're being pushed to the water, pushed to particular areas. So I believe that contributes to it as well. I can say with 100% that it's not the city's utility system, or in 25 days, it's not the county's utility system.
Any other comments?
Mine's just about the sign. Should we just say not for consumption? Because people are going to let their pets drink it, maybe? I mean, just not for consumption, rather than not for human consumption.
Or to me, I'm glad you brought that up, Rebecca, because for me, the word consumption has many connotations to me. It's not just a drinking. Consumption might be the kayak launch, or for me, the one that they said water unsafe for drinking, that would be for everybody. You know, I'm not going to let my animal, if I see that sign, my dog's not drinking there, kind of thing. If we're going to go the sign route, that would be.
Well, and my 11-year-old daughter would go to the playground and go off and go play in the creeks, and I told her absolutely do not go in the creeks, and she goes, oh, but we had such a great time, there aren't any signs that said we couldn't. So I think that we do need to go down the road of signage. I do think that it needs to be posted, because I mean, the kids, we are blessed in Southport that our children still have a little bit of freedom, and I think that despite our best intentions as parents and telling them not to do things, if they don't see it for themselves, they are not going to take that into account. So I applaud signage in some way. I don't know what the answer is for that.
Is it safe to eat shellfish from these creeks, or fish, or, I mean, that, because
I have the same issue with the sign, because the place that we have, other than the playground, and I was not aware of that access point there, is the place that I see the most people interacting with that water is when they're fishing at the end of Price's Creek. And so I think between now and the time this comes back, we can perhaps come up with a couple of options for this, because we have to figure out if the fish eat this stuff, or eat stuff that is in the water, and we catch it and we eat the fish, is that a bad thing? I would think so, but I'm not a scientist. And I'm not sure how much shellfishing is. We'll have to talk about that. But it's a good point, and we need to look at that.
I believe we're already closed to shellfish. We're already closed to shellfish, so that's.
Theoretically, you can't eat anything coming out of that river all the way down to here. DEQ put that out a couple of years ago. Most people don't realize it, because you can see the shrimp boats going up and catching stuff. But that water has been deemed unsafe to eat the fish out of the Cape Fear River all the way down here.
Marine
but
fish.
there's no signage.
There was a sign. There used to be a sign at Waterfront Park, at the pier at Waterfront Park several years ago. Now I don't remember what signs are there, but there used to be a sign that said, don't eat the shellfish there. But I believe Marine Fisheries, you go on their website, there's a map that shows you that you can click down to, that will show you that we're closed to shellfish and have been for many years.
Robert, did you have something?
I'm just struggling a little bit to think that someone's going down there and drinking water out of these creeks. So if we're protecting them from drinking water out of the creeks, we should protect them from eating things. Kids aren't going to a website to find out where they can eat fish out of what creeks.
I don't disagree with you. So that's why we're having this discussion, to bring all these things to light, so the manager can throw that into the mix of things to vote on.
I get, and also what would be a regular testing protocols, and there also needs to be a budget assigned to this so that we understand what we're doing to enact it.
Tom said he had enough money in the budget that we could do anything we wanted with his budget.
For 25 days.
So these are all good points. We've taken notes on it. We'll put that in the mixer and put it back out for hopefully a vote in the near future, maybe even on June 13th. I don't know if we can turn it around that quick, or the first one in July. Any other comments? So my closing comment on this is I feel the frustration of the creek watchers and of the staff trying to figure out, the staff was diligent, very diligent in trying to figure out what caused it. We do know that some of that is animal waste, but we also know that there's human DNA in the samples, because we've done that. So where that came from is one thing. And that's a nice little thing over here to always work to figure out how that happened. But what do we actually know is the water is polluted. And you can't imagine how much people have discussed are afraid of putting up a sign. They're more concerned about the wording on the sign than they are of not putting up a sign and letting people interact with the water. And that is my frustration. It is simply amazing. We're trying to figure out how many angels dance on the head of a pin when we have this big issue. It's polluted, all three of them. So we're moving forward. We'll put the staff will put the document together for a vote in the near future, and I thank everybody for their participation. I'm sorry, ma'am, do you have anything else? Okay. Okay, the next item is the Bay Street parking, which will be the manager and Heather.
Actually, it'll be me. All right, so there's two things going on with Bay Street, so I want to make sure that you separate these two things. One is the right-of-way issue. That's a whole different thing. We're not talking about the right-of-way issue. The second one is Bay Street parking. So as the city has talked since the time I've been here, 18 months, the city has talked more and more about parking and the need for more parking. Once we got Kingsley Pier and Park back open, I was told by some of the staff, we got a lot more traffic down there. We should probably look at putting more parking in that area. So Tom Z and I worked together on trying to put together, and Tom Stanley, what it could look like if we did do some more parking in that area. And there's the map, the proposed map right up there. So basically, it's a policy decision whether you want to move forward with this or not. Again, parking in this city has become a major, major issue, and we hear it constantly. So that's why it was something we put forward. If you want to move ahead, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. So whatever the board wishes, we can move forward with that.
Is there any comments from the board?
I do. I don't think that there's well, first of all, there's not a decision because we've already voted on how we're enforcing right-of-way, and this is in the right-of-way. But there's a larger plan before us about what we're going to do, first of all, with Kingsley Pier. Right now, you can't fish or crab, and that should be discussed as to whether or not we want to start allowing that. If we do, there would be more use. Also, as we have discussed among us and previous boards have discussed, the desire, as indicated in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that there be a connection between Low White Park to Taylor Field, from Taylor Field to Kingsley, and parking at all three, sufficient parking at all three would allow users to go back and forth without having to worry about having enough parking. I would like to see a true engineering plan that would, if we are going to put in parking here, that would address the issues that were raised by the people who spoke with us today about gravel getting into the road, drainage, making sure that there are no issues like that. But all in all, the future uses of Kingsley Pier and the overall connectivity of the trail from one end to the other, and again, that was called for in the master plan, I think will dictate our thinking about what we're going to do about parking there. So I think this is premature to even address for us.
Mayor, if I can, Tom Z's here. We talked about drainage issues. He can.
Basically, the design of the lot is actually a dry well system to handle the runoff that comes down. That's why it's a gravel drive over with about, I think, 6 or 8 inches. Clean stone on it, and then you have the sand underneath. So what goes in is going to just perk into the ground. So like I said, it's basically addressed as a drainage system and a parking lot at the same time.
If it does end up being a parking lot, could there be some kind of buffer along the curb of bushes or little
Yes,
berm or something like that?
That was discussed. This was just actually showing what it is, what kind of buffering would be up to open for discussion, but there was talk about putting bushes and stuff behind it.
And how would cars get in there? They wouldn't be coming in off of Bay, would they coming in on a driveway or something?
No, they're pull-in, this is parallel parking, not perpendicular parking on Bay Street.
Just for the audience, Tom.
Yes.
The lot, so the iron pin that we're seeing there, yep, that's the property line.
That's the property line.
Okay.
Yes.
So
everything from this line that way is city right-of-way.
yeah, you know, that is interesting because just doing a quick calculation, there's more than 6,000 square feet of property there that's been taken by that owner.
Correct.
And when you do the math on a 33 by 150 lot, that's less than 5,000 square feet. So that is the size of a lot in Southport. Just good for the record, and I know, Bonnie, you said we're not talking right of way.
I want to bring up the parking that's there. So as I've gone by Kingsley Park, I rarely see all of the spaces used. The parking on the opposite side of the street, on the hillside, as you make so if you're going up this way, you make the curve, and I guess that turns into Kingsley Drive there, where the post used to be with the roping. Have we accounted for that parking, or did we mentally take that away?
That parking is not sufficient enough to have a car park on it without hanging into the road. So really, it's not safe parking, what is currently there.
I'm sorry. There was an SUV there parked yesterday afternoon with me, and it was not hanging in the road.
I witnessed a truck yesterday hanging into the road, and I wish I had taken a photo. I'm not saying one way or another about this parking or that we need it, but I did see it happen just yesterday.
Guys, I've been on Howe Street and there are trucks hanging into the road. There's like we can't account for how people park. Like, I mean, stupid is stupid. You can't help stupid. So I just have a hard time with adding the additional parking in an area that I really don't think we need it. I think that the curbs that are in place, we're going to have to look at taking curb out in order to put this in place. There's an additional cost there, and quite frankly, we have so much in our budget that needs to be taken care of. This is so far down from something that we need to be doing that I'm a little bit frustrated that we've spent the time and effort talking about it, quite frankly.
I tend to agree with Alderman Kelly. I go down there fairly regularly and very seldom see any cars down there, maybe one or two, and one of those is mine. So I think we need to take a real close look at this before we spend money to do this.
Is there a possibility of making the parking that we currently have on Kingsley better?
Yes, there is.
Making the Kingsley
it would be
parking
costly, though. It would probably involve putting some kind of retaining wall into the hill that's there to get it sufficient. I mean, for a parking space, a perpendicular parking space, you need 20 feet of depth. So from the edge of the road, we have to go in 20 feet.
What about diagonal parking spaces?
Diagonal would probably be about 16, 17 feet from the edge of the road.
And is there 16, 17 feet there diagonally?
I don't have that information right now.
Okay. Tom, one of the things that has occurred to me, because I've had citizens talk to me about that curve and the safety of that curve, and one of just my own personal observations about the parking in Kingsley is it blocks the visibility going into the curve if you're coming down Kingsley and you come around. To me, I thought maybe why y'all had brought this was because it's a safer parking plan.
It is safer because the parking on Kingsley would be in the site triangle for that turn, yes. But
So the best thing I heard here was the fact that this is coming down a hill, one of 2 or 3 that we have, and it just seems like a dangerous place when you're pulling in and you have to back out with a downhill bicycle or car or whatever. When you turn that corner, you've slowed down a little bit. You have a chance to look. So I see that the Kingsley area parking is the best place to go, even if it does cost us money. I don't know if you can go in there with bulkhead. I don't want to damage the neighbors too bad, but I see the parking on Kingsley is better than coming down that down slope and having things on Bay Street.
Any other comment?
I think that we're looking at the situation as it is right now as opposed to what it might be in the future. Just over the weekend, I was speaking with someone who was not aware that Kingsley Pier had been repaired and was usable. I mean, it was damaged and hasn't been usable since 2018. And finally, a few months ago, it was finished and opened. And there are plenty of people who don't even know that. But again, this change, the uses of the pier and therefore the need for more parking are subject to future uses of what the pier will be, and also whether we ever get that trail opened up all the way from Leonard Street to Kingsley. So, yeah, I don't see that we've got a vote right here.
Any other comment? So as I was trying to research this, I found a whole bunch of interesting information on that one lot. So the owner of that lot was made the agent of the city of Southport for CAMA. He was made the agent of the city of Southport from CAMA in 2022. At which point he was responsible for doing the paperwork. There was a bulkhead that was there that was low and rotting away. And he asked the city if he could replace that bulkhead at his own cost. And that's why the city made him the agent, so he could work on that directly, and that's what happened. So the bulkhead for, I think, $25,000 was replaced and a brand new bulkhead was put in.
Just to clarify something, if you,
yeah.
I apologize for interrupting.
Go ahead.
For his property or adjoining properties?
No, the bulkhead was a city bulkhead, the original one, and it's right on the edge of his property. And he asked, since it was rotting away, could he replace it? It did benefit him, no doubt about that. There's no question. But it also benefited the city because they constructed the first bulkhead. So I didn't realize that we were making people agents, but they were. The next thing is I did go down there the other day and I realized that the posts were missing, that we took them out and we never replaced them. If they were rotted, I'm not sure why we took them out and didn't put them back in, because they marked the spaces. I've driven that parking lot since this discussion has started. I drive by there every day just on purpose. And even at the car show, and this town was packed for the last car show. There were 2 cars there. That was it, 2 cars. They didn't even need to park there to attend they didn't even park there to attend the car show. And the car show went all the way down that road, almost to the end. And there's nobody there. Occasionally somebody will park perpendicular in that, where the post used to be. I've seen that. I've seen people park up on the grass right in blocking the sign that says Kingsley Pier in the, I guess, the right of way. But we can do better signage and better stuff to control that. But right now, I just don't see a need to do this. If we're going to, if we did no parking study to look at it, and if we're going to go further, let's move around. What does the next step look like? The next step is we're going to be doing right-of-way stuff throughout the city. And we need parking everywhere, so is everybody going to have a parking lot in their front yard? Especially if you're in the first 2 blocks of House Street and Moore Street. I don't know how that's going to work out. I do know that even on Bay Street, You go to the top of Bay Street, I can't unbelieve the city had done this, but it shows the irregular way things have been done in the past. There's a house at the very end of Bay Street. It was always considered to be an unbuildable lot. In the city, I'm not blaming the guy to put the house in. I'm not at all. The city allowed that house to be built in the right-of-way. And then somebody, I'm assuming it's the city, wrote on the street, no parking. You can't park in front of that house, but you can park in front of everybody else's house. I don't know how we do this irregular system of how we choose where these things are going. If there's a need, a definable need to do something, the owner of this lot, and he's not my friend, I met him once, okay? He has offered to put a sidewalk in that will connect his property to Kingsley Park. And if you look at this street, that in the future, if we ever get the money, might be a good idea to have the sidewalk on that side of the street, because on the side that the sidewalk is on is not ADA compliant. There's a huge set of steps there, and you cannot get up those steps if you're in a wheelchair or have mobility issues. If you put the sidewalk on the other side, went all the way up the hill, you come to a live oak, and maybe we work around the live oak, or maybe we just touch where the crosswalk is, and you cross over to the other side, and you use the sidewalk from there down. Those are things for the future to talk about. But he has offered to put that, his representative, and I have a letter as to who his representative is, has offered to put the post back in and put fresh gravel down where the current parking is, all at his expense. So those are things just to put in the back of your mind, but the real issue today is, do we want to move forward or not with the parking? So, with that said.
Again, I think that, it's on us to not just make decisions for now, but for the future. And we don't know what the future needs of that area are going to be with that park. I also think that problems elsewhere and our city's failures to enforce over the years different aspects of the right-of-way and uses of the right-of-way, I mean, all of us know of, and we can walk all over the city and see violations of the right-of-way. But we have dealt with that, with what we decided and voted on to do with the right-of-way. And unfortunately, yes, there are hundreds of violations. It's on us to decide only, is this something we need to do? And if we need to do, then we can do it. This afternoon we'll be working on the budget, and I'm not inclined to put money into the budget this year to do this parking lot. And in this next year, we probably can find out whether there will be more uses of the pier, and will parking be necessary? So I don't see a vote coming up before today, and on our agenda it says proposed action discussion only.
Well,
So this is a discussion, not a vote.
I'm going to entertain a motion to table this issue, because we have to have some.
I have some
Go ahead, but I'm going
questions.
to. You go first, ma'am.
Because just looking at this is Chief Coring, our safety, Tom Stanley, our engineer. I'm concerned about the parking on Kingsley being safely done. I think that, I'm guessing, is the precipitation for this, because if our public safety and our public works and our engineer is talking about that, I'm guessing that's part of that.
No, let me
That's
just,
in the
let
form of
me
a
just
question.
explain. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me just say something. When I was told that there's a lot more traffic down there, I asked the staff, as public safety, Chief Coring, as Park and Rec, obviously she's in charge of the pier, Heather Hempel, Tom Z, to help me make decisions here and what we'd like to do. Since then, I need to let you know, they've been called And they've been called and said, how dare you put your name on this? What's this all about? That's not fair. I need to say that. I, as a city manager, asked the staff and the experts to give me some guidance, and that's what they did. But don't call them and then start calling them out for doing their job. That's their job. And so I just need to say that because things got misinterpreted here, and we're malicious and that's not the intent of the staff. It is not the intent. I asked them to give me their opinion, depending on what their, strength is, public works, public safety, and what their thoughts are on this. And that's how we came together to come up with this proposal. Now, if the board wants to vote today, you can vote today. No Bay Street, put the ropes back on Kingsley. I don't care. That's a policy decision.
I don't think we need to vote on this today. Personally, I think we need to continue to have conversation. I'd like to see a sidewalk added to the plans that we have with the parking lot, and maybe even an example without the parking lot, but still having a sidewalk in that space. And then just to clarify, maybe Chief Coring could tell us, is this a safer location, in your opinion, than the Kingsley parking?
Good morning, Mayor, Board, citizens. To answer the question, is it safer? I mean, that's a very unique area in Southport. Of course, I was born and raised here. I've been down there walking since I was a kid. Since being the police chief, I've heard different ones say, and here you go by there and there's not a vehicle there ever. There may be two here or there. We have had calls down there. We do have people that park in the road on that stretch. There's a curve there, so they can't pull up. There's rocks, again, right away. That's all. We talked about that when I was a board member for the 8 years I served. Right-of-ways are something that's unique and it's something that needs to be addressed. But since being the police chief, we do encounter a lot of issues in and around Southport, especially in this downtown area, people parking in the street because they do not know. They see a nicely maintained yard, and they don't know that they can park in there. We get calls, we come down there, then we're the bad guy. I had an officer the other day that got, just brutally, verbally attacked because he asked a gentleman to move his car out of the road. So I have had to pull over. I've witnessed vehicles parked everywhere up and down the road. That is a unique area. Yes, there's a curve there. I've been asked, should we put stop signs there? I don't think stop signs are the issue. There is a crosswalk put in place. That was done because I thought we needed to do something to address. We do have citizens crossing there. The sidewalk is on the opposite side of the road, carrying people over to the park. Up the top of the hill, the sidewalk's on the other side of the road. So, Mayor, it's a jigsaw puzzle all over Southport. We are very unique. But as the police chief, I would say something needs to be looked at down there. I don't know that this parking lot is the answer. I know citizens, you live there and you're probably thinking, there's going to be a parking lot there, so that's going to attract people that's going to be there after hours, and it's going to, it's right there in the neighborhood. Again, Southport is unique. We have neighbors and businesses that back up to each other, so I don't really know the yes or no answer. It would be nice to look at some options to make it safer. They planted some shrubbery right there. Well, now that shrubbery is overgrown. It's actually in the road, so the plants that were planted there by the city, they're somewhat of a hindrance because they're growing into the edge of the road. I've asked Mr. Stanley and Tom both to look at that. So if that's helpful, I don't know if it is. It may be too much information, but as the manager said, she called and asked, hey, take a look at it. I took a look at it, as did Tom and Heather. There are some improvements, and parking is something that's fading away. A lot of people are looking. Yeah, there may not be people parked on there right now, but we do have issues where there are cars parked in the road. And like I said, we have to be the bad guys. And so, yeah.
Chief, I'm confused. Are you saying they're parking on Bay Street in the road?
Yes, and I do have pictures, but I'm not going to.
No.
They park on, so going down the hill, when we had the Plain Air Festival, we got a call. I was in the area. There were 4 cars parked from the top of the hill all the way down toward the park. Some of them were participants with the Plain Air Festival, not knocking that. It's a great thing, but I pulled up, I said, you know, who's driving these vehicles? We had people stop trying to get around it, and so they're building a house right there. So it's a congested area. So we talked to them, and they didn't realize they could park over there in front of Dr. Z's house right there. I mean, the area across the street, the lady has a beautiful yard that's landscaped. You know, it takes away, people can't park in some of these areas. So that's what everybody kind of needs to understand. I don't want to be the bad guy or, you know, or whatever, but I mean, it's just, you know, things that I see and our officers see, and it's not just down there, it's everywhere. But yes, sir, people are parked in the road and leaving the vehicles in the road.
Okay. And before I lose this thought, I'm sorry? No, I just have one more thought. Talking about the line of sight issues. So you have the line of sight go either way. Coming down the hill, you have a line of sight issue. Going up the hill, coming around the corner, you have a line of sight. But when you were talking about the crosswalk, it reminded me, those bushes have gotten so high that when I came down that hill yesterday, the only reason I knew there was somebody there is because there was a taller woman, her head stuck above. The kid that was running in front of her, I could not see at all.
Right.
And the first time you could see then as you're coming down the hill is when he steps out into the street.
Right.
So we probably kind of look at that.
And the comments made about the parallel parking there versus the traditional parking like it's been all those years, either way, that parking is, but now, of course, we know vehicles are getting bigger, especially trucks. I mean, we're running into that problem that the parking down on Caswell and West Moore, the installed parking there, we get calls down there as well. Vehicles are sticking, you know, out into the road. So it's a citywide issue, not just there. So I don't know what the best answer is to. I'm probably not providing you with a good yes or no answer on this, I know, but it's a very larger problem. But I mean, to look at this, as Alderman Carroll said, let's look at it and see what it could look like. I'm not saying yes, definitely put in parking, or don't put it in, because you do go down there sometimes and there's not a lot of people parked down there, but there are other issues where, you know, we do have folks down there.
So I'll leave it to the pleasure of the board. Do we just move on and just have this as discussion only, or do we do something else?
As we were talking about parking, if parking is the issue and we're looking at the future plan to have connectivity, is there an opportunity at Taylor Field to continue the parking further down so it continues all the way down past the cemetery? And then that would be the additional parking. We could have another 60 parking spaces at Taylor Field that, if we're talking about connectivity, that's right in the center of everything, where people could get around from there. Just a thought there. I think that may have been a missed opportunity for additional parking when we put Taylor Field in. I think that at this point, it doesn't make sense for us to add the additional parking at Kingsley. I think that if we are looking at signage for other things, perhaps we look at signage for the other side of Kingsley Drive, where we say, you know, compact cars only, or something of that nature, where we're addressing that and letting people park there. And like I said, yes, cars are getting bigger, but we can't adjust for every opportunity that's going to happen for us. So,
excuse me.
Go ahead. After you. I think that this is just another kick the can down the road. I think that it doesn't make sense for the city to do this, and I don't think that the money is there for it either.
Ms. Bonnie, our parking study is not complete.
Correct.
Can we ask that this be included?
Sure.
Perfect.
You know, kick the can down the road, that's a consideration, of course. But the fact is, we need all the information before we can make a decision, and we don't have all the information. So let's not rush to do something that closes the door on what might be a future need, or might not, but we don't know yet. I'd like to see a different design. If there were to be a parking lot, I'd like to see it designed in a way that people didn't back into the road. And of course, if there is a sidewalk, that would be an issue. Landscaping to give the property owner that's between Kingsley and the river some buffering and visual barrier so that he doesn't have to look out his windows onto a parking lot. And again, we don't know what the future uses are going to be. Right now, people are not using Kingsley the way that they might if they could do many other things there. So, again, let's don't make a decision until we have all the information to make the right decision.
I'd like to make a motion to instruct the city manager to include this area or request that we include this area in our parking study.
Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Did I see a light down here? Okay. Any other comments? Let's move on to the next topic. Let's knock out Crown Castle, and then we'll take a break.
You know, just so you know, we have the city attorney who's going to go on and wait for us for closed session at 11, and the clock starts running, so we need to keep moving.
Okay, Crown Castle.
Larry will introduce our speaker from Crown Castle.
Aldermen, Mayor, good morning. May 5th meeting, Crown Castle was here, represented by Officer here, Mike Moore, introduced their small cell build to improve communications in Southport. There were questions by the aldermen, and this was tabled, and Darrell is here again to answer some of your questions and show some photos of towers and antennas. So without further ado.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, my name is Darrell Forster. Good morning, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. So yeah, I have a few slides. I thought it'd be good too to do some pictures of some existing small cells that we have existing. Just going through real quick, kind of the quick agenda. So basically start with who we are, who Crown Castle is, and then kind of go an overview shot of the initial build, and then give some existing site locations like I stated. So Crown Castle, so we are the largest shared infrastructure provider, not only from the state of North Carolina, but across the U.S. The numbers on the right there showing how many towers that we have, over 40,000, 120,000 active or on contract small cells, or 85,000 route miles of fiber. That's across the U.S. Specifically for the state of North Carolina, we have 1,000 small cells that are active or under contract. So kind of thinking about kind of the two umbrellas that we have underneath Crown Castle, we have the tower model, and I work on the network side. So the network is kind of broken up into kind of three pillars. We work with a lot of venues, theme parks, associated airports, working with all the wireless carriers. And then this specific build is for small cells. So when you think about a network, and it kind of gives you kind of an overview there, you have the traditional towers, and then even though this is called wireless, there's still a wireline component. So there's fiber optics that runs from the cell tower itself to these locations where you're either having drop calls or you're having problems with accessing the internet. So these little utility poles that you see on there, and it kind of goes more in detail in some of the pictures that I have from the small cells. Basically, it just eliminates the gaps. So what we're doing here in the initial overview map here is there's a need that started with dots on a map that the carrier uncovered that there's a need here, and this network that we're providing will not only provide for this carrier but all carriers, because like I stated, we have national agreements with all wireless carriers. So if I'm not mistaken, kind of the network piece of it, two of them is going to be in DOT right away, and the other two is in the city limits of Southport. And after the meeting that we had here, I came here again to kind of go over kind of more of the details of the deployment. And just like we do when we're working with a jurisdiction, there was a recommendation that here on the main road, I believe this is House Street, and this is what's the good benefit about working together. They were giving us a heads up that it might be a good idea for us to kind of maybe move over to, I think it's Lord Street. So a good recommendation. So from a design standpoint, even though it's showing on this one that it's House Street, right now we're working on a redesign showing it that it's going down Lord. And these are some examples of existing, and I can maybe move this back a little bit. So I'll try to talk loud. So on the left here, this was an existing power utility pole.
Sir, it's not working. The public has to.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, well, I'll do it from here. So from left to right, the first one was an existing power utility pole. You can see that, and when we go through the engineering piece of this, we make sure that the wood utility pole is structurally sound, and from an equipment, you'll see it at the 15-foot level, and then towards the top, you'll see the other components from the antenna standpoint. So same concept with multiple carriers coming through this. We'd go through an application process, say like this was existing. This is the anchor install. We would go through a permit process to say, doing a photo sim of this is what it looks like today, and then this is what it's going to look like after the additional tenants move on there. What we like to do is when we're adding additional tenants is do what we call a 4-carrier shroud. So that way the aesthetics look the same, but we're opening up the cabinet and changing the inner components while technology changes. The second one was going into a neighborhood where I know y'all have a big initiative here with all the aerial power is going underground. Like when I've drove by, I see all the conduit and see the ground transformers. So same way with that neighborhood, there was nothing overhead at all. So we had to work with the power utility not only to get the power to the new utility pole, but we went with a more aesthetic pole in that neighborhood because we always go, when it goes from dots on a map to filled boots on the ground, we stay with the aesthetics, right? So, and there, since there was not any physical utility poles or poles in general, just mailboxes, we went with a more metal fiber composite pole where all the cabling are actually inside the pole. Now, I know some of the initial discussions here is that you guys use some type of concrete pole that has basically the inner guts of it is actually missing where the cable and stuff associated goes in there as well. Hollow, thank you, that's a better term. And then the third one is actually a third party. We have third party attachment rights. This was a carrier pole that we attached to. You can see other transmission lines on that pole. And then the fourth one was a new wood Crown Castle utility pole. And if you look down the street, there was other wood utility poles, and that's why we chose that one. Any questions?
I do have a question. As much as I can tell from here, the second photo does not have a box on it because it's an underground fed.
So it does. I'm sorry, it's just because of the vegetation there,
Okay.
probably with the trees behind it, but there is a box there.
They're all going to have the silver box or
It is
whatever.
it's going to be, it's a shroud, yes ma'am, there is. And two, the color component of that, we can match the pole if it needs to. Just, that's where when we're going through the application process, we'll be able to narrow down exactly what it's going to look like. And also, I'm glad you pointed out that second one. Another thing that you would notice is with that more aesthetic pole, up towards the top, there's actually multiple tenants there. It just looks like one array. It's just inside that one array, there's multiple tenants. Yeah, when there's need for for a street light, we have worked with the jurisdiction or the power utility of attaching a street arm for light.
Any other questions?
do you have a power bill that you pay for this, or is the city picking up the bill for the power that goes to this?
That's a good question. So it's passed through, that we pay for it, but it's passed through to the carriers. It's a prorate share, but yeah, the city doesn't pay for it.
Do you have something?
So, if we're going to initiate this contract, do we still have the ability to have input about what the aesthetic of the pole and all of that?
Yeah, so usually the process, and it's really driven by the jurisdiction, usually what happens when we're applying for applications is there an application, a permit for the fiber component piece, and then individual locations, there's an individual permit for each location. Yeah, because just like you stated, one location might need a different need than the other.
What's involved with the fiber install?
So so this design is planned for a traditional, so it's a traditional bore, so everything's underground. So, you know, from kind of the standard piece, we're trying to get around 3 feet deep when we're building.
And that's just along the lines that were on that map?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, and then what kind of disruption should our citizens expect during the time that you're boring?
So, yeah, from having proper traffic control and, you know, from our due diligence initially of doing the 811 potholing and the traditional standard practices that we do, we work very diligently to make sure that we're not impacting existing utilities, and very timely on our restoration as well. So from a process of when, like, the submittals to getting the permits, we're looking around August of the time for us to get started.
I'm going to ask this for staff. Would this be similar to the underground cabling that we do now for our power? I mean, the same kind of process, obviously a different material, but the same type of a process, which seems to be low impact to the people around it.
Right, so some of the lines would be in conduit and bored, very similar to what's going on now. And then there's some micro connections that would go along the road and have very small areas there. There might be interconnections to the pole. And the poles, if we use city street lights, they would have an arm on them, and the antenna structure would be on the top of that in that location.
And if Crown Castle's already boring, can we go right along with them and drop our power lines while they're doing it?
We don't have a trench agreement with those folks, and it's going to be separate, but it'll be in the same place. And it's similar to what Spectrum has to do. We don't have power lines running in every direction where Spectrum is, and some of those folks have to, you know, put their own bores in for their conduit. But it's not any more obtrusive than what you see now, and not any more interruptive than what you see now.
Some of the areas where they're going to be boring, we still have overhead electric, correct?
Where they're boring, the overhead power in some cases is active until the interconnections are completed. Like an example on Moore Street, on West Moore Street. That's going away, but there's a couple interconnections that are remaining.
So can we do a trench agreement with them as they're boring and drop some of our lines as they're already doing that?
We do not have a trench agreement at this point, and they're going to put those in separately, but again, not any more obtrusive.
Well, I mean, we'll take a look and see what they say.
We can. We took those slides out because
it was just working through the agreement. Yeah, there is a, to your point, there is a rapid innovation that we're doing that is very less obtrusive that we can discuss and talk about. But to your point, from the power standpoint, this area, at least that we, you know, after this meeting, we went and rode, it looked like there was already construction that was done and already dug in place, 2 ground transformers that were already there. But from our build, what we would do initially, if it was going to be fed overhead from power, putting the weatherhead and putting the through bolt where it's coming, Once that transition does go from aerial to underground, we would work back with you guys on the ground transformer that we were to. But that's very good questions that you had.
I'm sorry, you already said, I thought you were boring. These show trench kinds of things and asphalt.
That's another tool in our toolkit, right?
But that's not what you're doing here.
So it's another tool in our toolkit that we can. Traditional boring and construction is what we'll do if that would be the preference. Basically in our meeting, I wanted to share that because that's something we've been doing the last 4 or 5 years that's been working well in pockets of our network, because the timetable of building, you condense it, you eliminate any type of unmarked utilities getting struck, right? Because you can do the most due diligence you can of doing 811, calling in locates, potholing, but still you might uncover some unmarked utilities. So that's another tool in our toolkit that I know that we were discussing, seeing about the approval piece.
And then my other observation is Southport tends to still be very busy come August. When we're looking at our citizens and disruption of not just those that live here, but also the tourists that are here, when we're looking at winter install, that could potentially be less impactful to the city as a whole. Just a thought process for that.
Understood.
So just to be clear, you're talking about boring. We're talking about boring and not cutting the road, and we're not like giving that out as an option. This project's going to be a boring project.
So for clarity, from our traditional build standpoint, traditional boring is our method. So another tool in our toolkit is deploying in the road, and it's very intrusive. Time to market, less interruption is an option, something that that we would have to get approval on. It's another tool in the toolkit. Yeah. So if not approved, we'll do the traditional. Yeah.
So one thing, like Darrell was talking about, the backbone, mostly boring, but to Mayor Alt's question at the last meeting, improvements to communication, if there were other areas that needed reinforcement, the option that you see there could be used to run another fiber over to areas that need to be reinforced. So once the basic structure's put in, it can be expanded to improve communications everywhere.
But if I saw the map correctly, even though it says House Street, it goes Lord Street all the way to the end of Lord Street. When I say the end, this end. Is that correct? I don't know if you can go backwards on that slide.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, right there. So the green line's coming down, I think that's Moore Street where it stops. On the very bottom of your slide. That's the very spot right there. That's I don't know what street that is. I think it's Moore Street. So that probably would address the issue since it's so close to where all the people are going to be on the 4th of July. If it's not, I guess we'll come back and ask you some other time to do that. But I would hope that would, you're a better expert than I, how far away from that spot would better reception be?
Yeah, and I would say, like, if just as a blanket statement, it's like a quarter of a mile, but it is impacted by structures.
There's virtually nothing there.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, the highest building is 3 stories. Yeah.
And two, the statement that you made, which was very proactive on the last meeting about taking what we're doing from this initial build and looking at any other coverage and capacity gaps that y'all have that we could take back. It's
basically this waterfront. So during the 4th of, is the chief here? Yeah. During the 4th of July, tell me if I'm wrong, sir. We have crowds all the way up House Street, but during like the fireworks and those bigger events that are down here, it's this waterfront here. And I'm just trying to figure out if we could figure out how to maximize extra coverage in that one area, then we wouldn't have to go through all the rigmarole of trying to get carrier on wheels here and the other things here, which we have not been successful so far. We just lose the cell service.
Yes.
So That was my question originally. And I'm not sure if that dot will help us. I hope it will, but.
Can you explain the difference between the purple proposed Rapid Connect and the green standard OSP build?
Yes, ma'am. So, when we were talking about this, like I said, we are going to redesign it off of Howe Street to Lord, but it was a different method of deploying construction of fiber. So the purple was the more of the innovative piece that we were talking about. That's in the right of way, in the roadway, while the other areas was going to be the traditional boring.
So if we're looking at the purple down 11th and Stewart, the Rapid Connect, is that the one, are you digging down the road rather than boring?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's actually, yeah, it's placing the fiber just under the surface of the roadway.
So you're cutting the road to drop the fiber and then patching? We use roadway marking tape. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and seal it and conceal the fiber. Yes, ma'am.
So are you willing to repave those entire roads for us while you're doing that?
So too, we can go over a presentation piece. You'll see it's something that we work with the jurisdictions on because one of the first questions we have is about mill and paving, and it's a coordination effort. We would like to be able to secure our facilities. You guys mill, now we can put it back down and it can be paved over, or there's been times where we waited till the road get paved to place it, because it does, from a road standpoint, it does weather to the road just like once we place it.
Have you seen our roads?
I have.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
I have a question for the city manager. The way this reads, it says, discuss whether an ordinance protecting our underground rights of way and protecting the city's established communication is needed. Ordinance, it says ordinance. I'm curious what that means.
This was something that the city attorney had recommended that we do, so we could try to get more detail from him. Right now, the thing is, are we going to move forward with working with Crown Castle?
Yeah.
Okay, since, if I understood that last conversation, we're not going to use this motion. We're just going to make one up that basically says, giving the manager the authority to move forward with the contract. If somebody has better words than that, I'm more than happy.
I'm so moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
For the purpose of time, we've got our attorney on the phone in 2 minutes.
Actually, I moved him to 11:30.
Yep. Go ahead. So the next agenda item, it will be why don't we just take a break? We'll take a 5-minute break, but I really mean 5 minutes. We're back in session, and the next item is number 4, H4, which is the city manager's contract extension.
Yes, this is very quickly, just you had asked me to overlap with City Manager Terrell, so it's just extending the current contract for a month, and then if needed after the fact, it would just be done on an hourly. And I'm not talking about if Stuart calls me asking questions. That doesn't bother me. It's if I have to come back for a lawsuit or for anything that I'm compensated for that, that's all, so.
I'm sorry, do we need to pass that, correct? We have to- Okay. I'm going to give it back to you. Hold on. I would entertain a motion to extend the current contract to Bonnie Theron 1 month until July 31st, 2024, and to approve the assistant agreement with Bonnie Theron to be paid on an as-needed basis for any future project work as requested by the city manager or any legal matters where her testimony is needed. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir, thank you. And this in no way, I'm just trying to understand, and the reason I say this, I know we have talked about extending and overlapping, but I was wondering if we could overlap more in a contact way, because Bonnie, aren't you traveling the first, for some reason I remember a vacation.
July 26th.
Oh, not till then? Well, so, because for me, we've got a assistant manager, we've got department heads, we've got engineers. I just didn't know if there was an easier way that didn't require as much of Bonnie's time, that's all.
I mean, that's up to you guys, because you're the one who asked me to do it. So.
I know, but I'm wondering if you would be okay with that. I'm really sort of trying to have that conversation.
So there's a...
Well, I mean, one of the thoughts would be to shorten it from 30 days to half that time, and then maybe the hourly beyond that?
Well, the issue that we have is that our next manager is going to walk in on July 2nd. That first week is a loss, just because of events. We do not know right at this moment how the water sewer thing is going to be done by then or not. We would hope that it's done. And we have a development issue that may come up right soon, and the manager's expertise and knowledge of that topic would take us months to fill Stuart in on. So the question is that this allows us to do this by having this motion, and I truly do think it's the best method right now. We get through the month of July, and then, well, almost July 26, whatever it is, and then we call her when we need her to do something, because there's a couple of big things that are coming up. Remember, I think there's still 30 some odd projects that Stuart's going to have to digest as we move forward. So the only thing that's really more set is the first 3 weeks of July. And to me, that's working overtime, working with the manager to fill him in on all those projects and things that are in front of us. It's a good use of money.
Well, it's happened to me in the past in my career to walk into a new and very complicated job and find an empty desk, an empty file cabinet. So I know that's not exactly what would happen, but the impact of not having Bonnie there to actually walk Stuart through everything and be available right on site, I think it's just an awful thing for him to contemplate and bad for the city. In fact, I'd be in favor of making this longer, but since Bonnie is willing to stay on call and hourly, that would be okay.
We need some period of time when there is an overlap. He's going to bring some skill sets with him, and he's going to learn from Bonnie. But Bonnie's got to Southportize him because of all the projects we've got going on and all the things that it doesn't matter if it's an extension or even if you go hourly, it's not going. The cost isn't going to be any different. It should be very little different.
I think that if I'm not mistaken, it's like $75 an hour. And right now we're paying about $12,000 a month. So that's a lot of phone calls or visits. I'm just,
So do we split the difference? Do we do a 3-week extension to the mayor's point and then go hourly? So you're on vacation and you've checked out with us?
Why don't we just go to an hourly and just do the agreement, and I won't extend for the month. This is crazy, we're spending this much time on this. Just go to an hourly rate, and then if I go home and Stuart's got meetings, then I'll go home, that's all.
All right, I'm sorry.
A
Go
point
ahead,
of
go ahead.
clarification. I think what Bonnie, I think what you were just saying is you would come and be there as long as he needed you to be there in that month, and then if you weren't needed that day, then is that what I?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
You guys had just asked me over and over, would I stay for a month and transition, so
Would
it
this-
doesn't matter to me.
but essentially, I guess, those 3 weeks, you could put in a 40-hour work week if it were needed.
If it were needed, yes.
Okay.
All right, so I read out a motion, which, is anybody going to make that motion that I read? Or do you want to do another motion?
We have a motion, so if we're going to make it, if we're going to change it, we have to amend it.
You're correct, I'm sorry. So we have a motion on the floor, we have a second. I'm just going to ask for a vote on the motion, and then if that fails, we'll go back to another motion. Well, I'm not sure how it's going to go. All in favor of the motion as it was originally read, would you please raise your hand? Okay, lacking a vote, is somebody have another motion?
Move to approve a contract with the city mayor, city manager for an hourly extension as long as needed.
Add an amount. Are you comfortable with the 75?
Yeah, but I also want this memorandum of agreement. This is very important because of legal matters. And Brady and I worked on this together. Because my last interim job, I got pulled into legal cases. And I want to make sure I'm covered.
Would you want us to table this until next week, and then we could do it, Bonnie? You can
No,
have
you
it
don't
written
have
the
to.
way.
I just want to make sure that as a part of the motion, the assistance agreement is approved.
right.
That's my big thing.
Okay.
And that we approve the assistance agreement as prepared by our city manager.
Second.
And just for the motion, might just add that that is at a rate of $75 per hour.
Okay, there's a motion, there's a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Tom Z. As Tom Z is coming up to the table, he and I can't even remember what meeting we were in, but he mentioned that he had written this draft, and it caught my attention because of the issues that we've had in the city. I wanted us to start this discussion. The floor is yours, sir.
This is something that been working on with the help of Dory, Mo, and Kylie. Basically, it's revamping our stormwater ordinance in town. I'm just going to give some highlights because it's not really ready for publication or anything yet. But currently, stormwater regulations in the city don't kick in unless you have over 10,000 square feet of increased impervious coverage. That's an R10 lot, covered entirely. It also doesn't kick in unless you have 1 acre of disturbance. So it's an either or. What's being proposed in this new one is it would kick in at 800 square feet of impervious coverage and 2,000 square feet of disturbance. At that point, you would have to do you'd have to address your stormwater that the increased impervious is covering. It's going to be broken into two categories, a minor and a major development. And I'll start with the major development, what we're looking at. Currently, in the ordinance for the 2, 10, and 25-year storm, you're not allowed to have any increase in the peak flow leaving the site. What is going to be proposed is for the 2-year storm, there's going to be a reduction of 50% in the peak flow leaving the site. For the 10-year, a reduction of 75% in the peak flow leaving the site. And for the 100-year storm, an 80% reduction in the peak flow leaving the site. So it's not that we're just going to be allowing the same amount to go off peak flow, we're going to have a reduction. The other thing that's not in our current ordinance is stormwater quality issues. In this proposal for these major developments, there is an 80% total suspended solids removal included for a rainstorm that's 1.25 inches in 2 hours. That's a water quality storm. And that's for water quality that gets into the river and the streams and stuff. For minor developments, and by minor development, this is mostly someone who's putting a single-family home on an undeveloped lot, or someone who's putting an addition on their house. That's where that 800 square feet kicks in. If they go over 800 square feet, what they would have to do is infiltrate 3 inches per square feet of the new impervious coverage and have an overflow should it back up. For instance, on this, if a 10 by 10 area would require 25 cubic feet of storage or infiltration. And this would apply to all lots, non-conforming, conforming, whatever. Any lot that has a development come in of 800 square feet of impervious coverage or more would have to comply with this. One of the questions that you're going to ask at some point is, well, how does the homeowner deal with that? There's two major ways you can. First is just a simple dry well. Second is more of a rain garden. I don't know if you're familiar with a rain garden. For those who aren't, a rain garden is a landscape shallow depression planted with native plants that captures and temporarily holds and filters stormwater back into the ground. So that's the basis of what we're doing. Right now it's about 31 pages long. There is some cleanup in it that's needed. And as I said, working with Dory, Mo, and Kylie to get this all cleaned up. And with that, I'll say, any questions?
I just thank you for doing this. Boy, is that needed. And from my personal experience, I live next door to a house and a property that has nothing but coverage. I mean, there's not a blade of grass.
And one thing I didn't mention is in here is a lot of green BMPs. That's best management practices. So it's not all mechanical stuff. It's a lot of, swales and things like that, infiltration, trenches and stuff.
So one of the questions we had the other day was, this will be a fundamental shift because now, if I understand the rules, all the stormwater issues are opined by DEQ. And this, I don't know, do we come to a conclusion? Do we actually have the authority to do this?
Yes.
So we have the authority. That would be a second part of this whole thing, is to put into play that if you're going to do development in Southport, Southport has the right to look at your stormwater and opine on how it's going to be done.
Correct. And we could be more stringent than a state regulation also. We have that right.
Is there any questions? Once again, the purpose of this conversation is to get your brains thinking about this. We'll ask the manager to ask Tom Z to kind of put this on a piece of paper for us that we can go back and forth and get smarter or ask questions and all of that other stuff.
And pictures, please, of what that looks like as well.
pictures of like a rain garden and things like that?
Yes, please.
Gotcha.
Robert, you had anything?
I was just going to ask, and then in this conversation, maybe I know other municipalities use stormwater fees in order to create infrastructure and that sort of thing.
This would be the first step in it. The first thing we want to do is get this ordinance in. As part of the ordinance, there's actually review fees that we'll be charging, stormwater review fees, to review all the plans and stuff. There will be another part of this that comes out after we have it in place for a year, where there's actually, you have to register your detention basins and things like that, and provide us with the maintenance schedules that you're doing, and we will go out and inspect them to make sure they are operating properly, and, you know, all that. Yes, of course. If we're spending time doing it, you need to have a fee. What happens a lot of times is, I've seen through my career, is, you know, these people, developers, put the detention basins in or infiltration basins in, and then they just, that's it, forget about it. In my previous job, we started this a program like this, where we went out 4 times a year and inspected every one of the detention basins and infiltrations in town, and made sure they were working properly. So
We don't even do that on our big development ones.
No.
So,
starting now, we're going to start doing stuff, but
as we build towards Nirvana, we certainly do that. But I just was captured by this thought that we're finally addressing some of the many issues that we have, especially in the lower end of the town, but not exclusively. So anybody have any questions? Thank you, sir.
One thing, this will apply to not just new development, new subdivisions and so on, but if an existing property owner wants to add something or pave more of the yard or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
It deals with creeping developments.
Thank you, sir. So the committee reports are attached to your document. The manager's report?
Yes, very quickly, that we've really noted, Chief Coring brought this to my attention, we're having a lot more golf cart injuries, some pretty serious. So I just want to remind people that your golf cart must be registered with a city sticker or DMV plate. Seat belts are required. You must be 18 years old to operate. We're noticing more and more kids driving those. You cannot do that. Make sure you're riding to the right of the travel lane. I notice this all the time. They're right down the middle, and you need to stay to the right, not down the middle of the road, and that you follow the rules of a motor vehicle. But we've had some pretty serious injuries, and people have got to start paying attention to the golf cart is not a car, so just say that. Just a reminder, public hearing on the budget is June 17th. You will note we now have a flag in back of us. Chief Drew mentioned to me that we really shouldn't be doing over here. So if we can start remembering to turn this way, it would really, instead of us going like this, backwards. And then lastly, I think all of you know Brandon Stevens is leaving us as of Monday. And Brandon's done a lot for us in the finance department, and I want to wish him very well on his new job, and I thank him for all his help, especially the year before on the budget, because he was a godsend, so we wish him very well. Thank you, Mayor.
2 things following up on what the manager said, and I'll actually do this in writing. I was not aware that the staff was getting, I'm going to use the word harassing phone calls over the issues that they were assisting both the manager and the Board of Aldermen on. So the staff, part of their job is to, if we have an idea, is to work through that idea and give us the pros and the cons. But for citizens to call them up and to harass them over that, if you want to harass the manager, then call the manager. If you want to harass the mayor, then call the mayor. but I'm going to ask people not to call the staff and try to browbeat them to change a document that they're just following the directions of the manager. We still have to have a special meeting, and we originally were talking about June 10th, which is Monday, which now I can't do because I have to go to the RPO meeting. But the special, we'll have to work with the board here to find out a special meeting. The cemetery committee wants to come and talk to us. Alderman Davis wants to have a discussion about open space and developments and how that would work. And the Center for the Creative Arts of Southport wants to have a discussion with us. We'll work on that by email and stuff and try to find a date as quickly as possible. And with that, board comments, but we got like 4 minutes. Robert? I mean, Karen?
No, I'm good.
Alderman Carroll?
If you'd like to harass an alderman, call low.
Actually was a citizen calling. I have one thing, and that is Chief Drew's not here, right? No, not Chief Drew. I'm sorry, Chief Corey. But you can probably answer this too. Okay. As tall as you are, I did not see you over there. On my street, which is a one-way street, golf carts are almost constantly coming the wrong way. Are golf carts allowed to do that, or are they supposed to follow the rules of the road? Okay. What about electric bikes? They also are going wrong way down.
The chief is saying rules of the road in case you can't hear him.
Alderman Kelly?
No, sir.
Alderman Spencer?
I have to take advantage of my opportunity. When I was growing up as a kid, there were a few gentlemen that were like, you wanted to be like. Whether they were good or bad, you had heroes in Southport. Baxter Sterling passed away here this last week. And you haven't seen Baxter lately. He was the manager of the bank. He and his cohort and neighbor Larry Hemby were into all kinds of things as I was growing up. You had many fundraisers, hee-haws, 4th of July volunteerism. They created the football jamboree that we go and see in Wilmington. A lot of contributions. So I just have to think, and I don't know if there's any drinking up in heaven. I don't know. But I have to think that Larry Hemby and Baxter Sterling are drinking a Miller Lite, listened to my man Ronnie Millsap saying I wouldn't have missed it for the world or lost in the 50s tonight, because that's how they rolled. They were they loved life, and we're going to miss Baxter Sterling. Condolences to Andrew and Mary Mack and their grandchildren. Finally, congratulations, Ellie. You got out of here while you should have. He's done great work with electricities and all, and he's taught me a lot as well, so I appreciate him as well. Thank you.
Alderman Lay?
Nothing in addition to that.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. We're going to go into closed session. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm going to have to just quickly say this. We're going to go into closed session under North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3.
own